All right. Hi, my name is Nupur Kumar. I'm the managing partner here at Fact Professional. We are a full-service CPA firm that's here to help out with your tax and accounting needs and questions.
And I'm Kimball. I'm the marketing director here at Fact Professional, and I used to be a freelance graphic designer who has now realized that last year I filed my taxes very, very incorrectly. So Nupur is here today to answer all of my and hopefully your questions about how to work freelance and how to file your taxes when you do work freelance.
Okay, let's do it. This is an interesting topic. I'm really happy you brought this up because this is a really interesting topic and there's so much myth around everything around this. So let's get started. What you should know before turning your passion into a practice. I like it.
Very catchy.
Yeah. So the first question is, what does it mean to get 1099? So I do get a lot of questions from clients about what is a 1099 miscellaneous. So a 1099 miscellaneous is typically it's miscellaneous income. The IRS created kind of a catch-all form a while back in regards to all the different types of incomes you have. So a 1099 miscellaneous actually shows rental income, it shows royalties, it shows all these other details that you could get. But the most important thing that you're going to focus on with a 1099 miscellaneous as an independent contractor or freelancer is box 7. Which shows your 1099 as kind of other compensation. It is taxed differently. I think that a lot of times we get questions about why are the taxes higher for a 1099 versus a W-2, and it's taxed at a higher rate because you pay an additional amount of self-employment tax. And also you have already paid your taxes ahead of time within your W-2. You don't do that with the 1099. It's kind of taxed at a different rate because it's considered self-employment income and because you haven't paid your taxes in advance like you have throughout the year with the W-2.
I have a question for the folks like me. Is there a different kind of 1099 or is it just the 1099 miscellaneous is the 1099 form?
That's a really good question because 1099 is what everybody talks about. So it's getting 1099. But there are a lot of different forms, so they're not very creative. But for example, a 1099 INT is for interest income. A 1099 DIV is for dividend income. A 1099 SSA is for Social Security Administration income. So there are different types of 1099s. And again, the 1099 miscellaneous was a catch-all form, and that's what's called the 1099 MISC. I will say that in this new year, we're going to see a big change, which is the new form is going to be called 1099 NEC. Not very creative. It's for non-employee compensation.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So it's just like income that's not from an employer.
Exactly. Right.
Okay.
Because when you're 1099, you don't have really an employer because you are an independent contractor.
Yeah.
When you're freelancer, right? So there is that difference there. But technically, yeah, 1099 NEC is just if you're not an employee and you're getting compensation. But I will say that the IRS is really examining this area, and it's come into the limelight, the spotlight because of all these other things that are happening with, the gig economy. Mm-hmm. But I will say that this is going to be a big change. Most people don't know about this new form, the 1099 NEC. So anyone who's filing these, they should be really aware of this. Any questions on that?
No, that's so just the 1099 MISC is no more next year. It's the 1099 NEC.
Right. For independent contractors in 2021, you're going to see this new form.
Okay, cool.
But for other income, they may use that form still, but just for this one, they should, all people who are issuing them out and receiving them, they should be really aware of this change.
Cool.
But it's going to function the same. Well, mostly the same. Cool. Right. Well, I'm not confusing you further with all this.
We're gonna have to do a follow-up when I was making my questions for you, I was just like, I don't know what I don't know.
Yeah. I always captured everything because there's so many questions I get about this, and it's totally fair. I'm really happy you posted this W-9 here because a big question I get is how do you issue a 1099? and also how do you receive one. So on the right side, you'll see that W-9 form. You can, I think you've created some kind of access where we can get this. We post it on our website too, but the IRS does post it on theirs.
Mm-hmm. We'll post it in the description of the video on YouTube.
Perfect, awesome. So the W-9 form is a form that the person who's issuing the 1099 gives to the person who's doing the job. So if, as a freelancer, right, if you are, you know, I always talk about graphic design because it's one where you have a certain amount, right? So let's say you're, you have $3,000 that you received over the course of the year from one person. And this could be a person or it could be a company. At the end of the day, it's as long as the income's over $600, they have to issue you a 1099.
Got it.
So once it's past that threshold of $600, and it can be by cash, by check, however they paid you. The point is, whatever the total amount they paid you for that year, not what they're going to pay you, they should give you a W-9. And most of the time, I recommend to fill out the W-9 before you even finish the job. And people who, because some people don't like to be 1099 because then they get taxed at a higher income. They don't want to show their income. So I do recommend figuring this up right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
With a W-9, you can fill this out with your individual information, with your social, with your with the name of your DBA if you have a DBA, or any other, or if you have an LLC, you can fill it out with that information. You'll notice on the top there it says the name as shown on your income tax return. So if you have a corporation, then you'll fill out your corporation information. If you're an individual, you fill out your individual information.
And for a DBA that's doing business as, and even if you're an individual, but you want to like give people, you know, on your checks and stuff, another name that sounds a little more official. Is that when you would use a DBA? Like, do you have to have a corporation to use a DBA? Or if you're just an individual, can you still use one?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Good question. So a lot of freelancers, they want to have their own name on their, you know, on all of their contracts and everything else, and they want to have an official name to use.
Mm-hmm.
So in that situation, I don't always recommend creating a corporation. At that stage, I recommend making a DBA. You know, especially if you have a few smaller jobs that you're planning to do, and you can use the DBA with your social security number. So you can do a little bit of both. And I definitely recommend if you are starting out, don't make a corporation. The second you make a corporation, you're making a whole separate entity. It's a whole, you know, it's a different process. While it's a great thing to have the corporation, I think that when you're starting out, especially as a freelancer, it's really good to create that DBA, create that structure. DBAs exist for about 5 years anyway, so you don't have to renew often. And then yeah, so here, for example, in W-9, you fill it out with the name shown on your tax return. If there is a business name, you can include that. Here, you would say you're an individual if you had a DBA, and then fill out your address under 5, 6, and 7. And then the final thing to do is under part 1, you fill out your social if you were a freelancer with a DBA.
So you don't fill out the employee identification number?
Yeah, good question. So the employer identification number is only if you have an EIN. If you do not have an employer identification number, it's not something you need to fill out.
Okay.
So the EIN number is kind of like the social for a corporation. You can get an EIN number as, you know, as an individual, but usually it's more if you're filing for payroll taxes or, you know, you have an LLC. But as an individual, you can use your social on here, and you sign it, you date it, and you give it back to the person who you're doing the project for.
Got it.
And it's kind of like, you know, I know there's so many different forms, but it's kind of like the W-4, where on the W-4, before you even start your job, you fill out a W-4 with all of your allowances. You don't have to fill out allowances here because you get paid a gross, like the gross check or whatever total amounts.
Right.
But before you even start your job, this should be filled out.
Okay. Good
Yeah.
to know.
So if someone asks for it, it's nothing sketchy. It's an official form, and I know that a lot of times I get this call saying, "Am I supposed to fill this form out? Is this something that they're allowed to have my social?" And they are. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know it's nerve-wracking to give out your social.
Okay.
Cool. So I mentioned, when do I need to issue a 1099? So anytime that anyone does a job that's over $600, and it's more for services. So if they do a service that's over $600, then at that stage they should issue something out. That's for any type of work. I mean, if I hired someone to repaint our office and it's over $600, then at that stage they need to receive a 1099.
Okay. And is it like, no, I think I got it, but I'll ask it anyways. Is it,
Yeah, ask it.
if you, in the entire year, you're going to pay them over $600. It's not like you hire them for each individual project and it's just however much you're paying them total in the year. Right?
Exactly. It's whatever is total paid out for the year. So if you did a job at the beginning of the year for $500 and at the end of the year for another $500, the total over the course of the year was for $1,000. So because the total was for $1,000, then you need to receive a 1099 for that income. And I do get this question a lot, which is, what if you were supposed to receive a check and you didn't receive it until January? Well, then at that stage, because you didn't receive it until January, you should report it in the next year.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good question. And then, so those are the details on when do you need to issue one. Another question I get quite often is, can I create a 1099 by kind of filling a form out online? So you can fill out a 1099. They do have templates online to do that, but that doesn't actually mean you filed anything with the IRS. So a lot of times I see this where where I will just see like a written out 1099 that's just handed out to someone. So if you receive a 1099 and it's just handwritten, that means that it was not filed with the IRS.
Okay.
So yeah, so one thing that's really interesting is all these tax forms that you have, all the W-2s, interest income, retirement, every single tax form that you've received has actually been filed with the IRS. And I like to think of it as like they take a red form. I like to think of it as a Scantron type of form where they have all the information and they scan it into their system and it creates a transcript of everything. So if you receive a written 1099, then most likely this was never issued to the IRS. So it's really important that anyone issuing out a 1099 does not do that, because that's not an official form.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you get the 1099 from the person who's paying you, correct?
Right. So you would receive a 1099, exactly. So let's say you and I are working together and I hire you to build out our website. So I would issue you out the 1099. Now, if I fill out a piece of paper that says 1099, right, fill out the form and I write in all the details and I hand it out to you, that doesn't mean that anything was filed with the IRS. For me to do my complete obligation, I would actually need to fill out something called a red form with all of this information, get that mailed to the IRS, and give you your copy of the 1099 as well. So it needs to be both. It needs to be sending it to the IRS and sending it to you as a recipient.
And so let's say that you don't, send it to the IRS and then I file the 1099 when I do my taxes. Am I going to get in trouble if you didn't do that part, or is it just you who are going to get in trouble?
Well, they are not really penalizing anyone to the degree that they should be yet. I will say that in this scenario, I would get in trouble if I didn't file it. But a lot of times what happens is, and if you report the income, right, and I don't, the IRS is happy because you're paying the taxes on your income.
Yeah.
So they're fine with that. They're like, great, she gave us the money. A lot of times the state of California, they do ask for additional copies of the income that was reported so that they have the records. The IRS may ask for additional proof of income. So at that stage, it's really good to keep the copies of any 1099s you receive so that you can send out the copies to the IRS if they ever request for additional information. But yeah, at this stage, I mean, if you're reporting the income and I didn't, that's not great, but it's not really detrimental to you. However, if the other way around happens where I issue it out to the IRS and you don't report the income, then you're going to get taxed on that income and get penalties in the mail for not filing that income.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Good question. I know. Fun. All this tax stuff is so fun.
Oh, so scary, but fun.